Halo music composer Marty O'Donnell is running for Congress in Nevada. As a Democrat, you ask? No, as a Republican. Now, this is the guy with the ooh song, the original, I think. I do remember the name. He's a pro-Israel Bush-era warhawk, literally uniparty garbage. Marty O'Donnell? That's a shame to hear, Kieran, but I'll have a look. Marty O'Donnell, the creator of the music for Bungie games like Halo and Destiny, announced he is running for a seat in Congress in Nevada. O'Donnell lives in Lone Mountain, a neighborhood in Las Vegas, and he will run against incumbent Democrat Susie Lee in November in Nevada's 3rd Congressional District, assuming O'Donnell prevails in the Republican primary in June. O'Donnell has to officially file to run in March. He said in an interview with GamesBeat, it's a strange choice of an interview. Well, I guess actually game publication, that makes sense. He wants to restore sanity to Washington so he can rebuild our economy, to have a thriving middle class, bring security to the country and the border, and restore the values that led to strong families and strong communities. That sounds fine so far, kind of boilerplate Republican stuff, but let's see if there's anything more than that. O'Donnell is pretty well known in video game circles as a composer and audio director for games like Riven. Really? Riven? I didn't know that, actually. Myth 2, Halo Combat Evolved, Halo 2, 3 ODST, Reach, Destiny, and Golem. Haven't heard about Golem, actually. He is new to politics, as he's never run for office before, so was Trump. Quote, politics has always been kind of a hobby, O'Donnell said. I just don't really like the toxic division. Okay, he used the word toxic. That puts him more so, I would think, in the leftist camp. This is a term that I hear mostly leftists, especially Zoomers, using. I don't like the term. For one thing, I think I can see why the term exists as it is, but I think it's usually used for just people being mean. That's bad enough on its own, but you could change its meaning by changing what you use it for. But the main thing I don't like about it is the implication that by being toxic, there's someone that should be avoided. There's someone that is erased, exiled from public discourse on the basis that they're mean. I fully dispute that should ever be the case, except purely by individual choice. Which is sort of what this is, but I still don't like the idea that would become a widespread issue. He says, I don't really like the toxic divisions that are happening in our country. I don't like any of that stuff, and I was sort of reaching out to some local people if there was some way I could help out. I got a bunch of calls from people who asked if I would consider running for Congress. This is in the believe it or not category of stories I've done over time, says this author. The last game developer I wrote about running for Congress was Brianna Rue, who ran for a seat in the 8th Congressional District of Massachusetts in 2018. She lost. O'Donnell hopes his own fame in gaming will help him, and he thinks his lack of experience in politics will be an advantage. It certainly could be. O'Donnell acknowledges he hasn't lived in Las Vegas for very long, but he hopes to be able to represent it well. Now, if he can ally with Trump, there's actually a pretty good chance he could actually win. But as someone said earlier, they said that he's a rhino, like boomercon, neocon kind of warhawk. We'll see if that's the case. Quote, we understand what it's like out here and we love Nevada. I love Las Vegas, he says. I never thought I'd be saying that being from Chicago and Seattle. He says, I'm very happy with the weather here. Wes can corroborate that that's how you pronounce that place name, Seattle. Game developer, woo. Well, technically, she was responsible for one game. It sucked ass, but she was responsible for it. Allegedly. I don't know what she actually did to Seattle. What is Brian doing these days? Quote, we understand. I asked him if he supports Trump. He said yes. That's going to be a hot button. Okay, that's good. That's encouraging. Quote, America enjoyed a secure border and no inflation in the Trump administration 4 years ago, O'Donnell said. I have voted for President Trump twice and will vote for him a 3rd time this autumn, he said. But no matter who is elected this November, if I have the privilege to serve, I plan to work with them. That's what voters expect, and that's what I'll do, he says. That's good to hear. But let's see if he actually is that. O'Donnell, 68, so if he gets elected, he might be 69. Consider that. See a titty. He grew up in Chicago. Well, that would change a man. He earned his Master of Music degree in composition with honors from USC in 1981. Then a few months later, Marty started his first career in founding the Chicago-based commercial music and sound production company O'Donnell Salvatore, Inc. In 1997, Marty embarked on his second career producing music and sound design for video games. He created sound design for Cyan's Riven, the sequel to Myst, and all of the audio for Bungie's award-winning Myth series. I didn't know there was Bungie, actually. In 2000, he moved to Seattle after Microsoft bought Bungie, whose Halo turned into one of the most successful game franchises of all time. At least 81 million copies have been sold to date. which is funnily enough about the same number of votes that Trump got in 2020. And much more than Biden got. The award and music for the Halo series have received numerous honors. I'm going to skip the Halo stuff because we kind of know that. I want to get to what his politics actually are. He apparently helped lead Bungie to regain its independence. Interesting. He was involved with Sir Paul McCartney, which I don't think is a good sign. I don't know much about him, but I think he's lefty, isn't he? A few years ago, he moved into semi-retirement and relocated to Las Vegas to be close to his grandchildren. His last project was working for Highwire, creating the VR game Golem, and he worked on the controversial game 6 Days in Fallujah. That game is in early access. Am I pronouncing that right? I might not be. I don't really care. Before games, O'Donnell worked in television and radio, etc., etc. Asked about politics, he said, "This is not something I ever expected to do. I wanted to spend more time with family, and now I probably need to spend less time with my family. At least that's what my family is telling me. I don't think I'm the kind of guy who really wants to retire forever, but I don't want to do any more crunching in the games business." He says he is a civic-minded person. He has served on jury duty several times, and he said he always hated career politicians who spend their whole lives running. Maybe you should run after them then. "I've always thought that Congress should be like a civic duty, right?" He says you should go in and then do your bit and then get out. "It was like somebody was asking me to put my money where my mouth was," he says. "I used to tell my kids there should be Congress duty, just like jury duty." Not sure I'd say Congress duty, but term limits? Yes, absolutely. His daughter runs a non-profit, Foster Kinship. She encouraged him to take the step. The district itself is on the northwest side of Las Vegas in middle-class neighborhoods. It doesn't include the Las Vegas Strip, but it does include Summerlin, Lone Mountain, and parts of Henderson, wherever those are. And what he said about career politicians, they are a problem, but I'm not sure you can really prevent that. I'm not sure what you would do. Any way that you would do it might have a worse downside or a big enough downside that it's not worth it. So I'm not sure about that. It's pronounced Fadurka. Okay, thank you for clarifying that. Lighthouse says, what are the chances the boomer right, for example, Matt Walsh, will freak out when being forced to realize the importance of culture, especially when it comes to entertainment? That's a very broad question, Lighthouse, and I'm not sure if Matt Walsh is really boomer right. I've seen some good things from him. Perhaps I'm mistaken, though. Very controversial, but people have no issue with World War I, World War II games. It's dumb, says Telly. Quote, "One of the things that's so depressing to me is when I watch the TV or the news, I start yelling at it all by myself," he says. Well, I was doing that and then I monetized it. You're doing the same thing in a different way. The amount of toxic divisions, he says, that have happened in the last decade, I just don't like it, he said. "We have disagreements on political issues. We agree on what games we like, or we agree on music, or we have common ground on a lot of stuff. We don't have to demonize each other all the time." Well, in the games industry, there is some amount of disagreement along the very same lines, I'm afraid, because one side of the culture war is not playing fair. O'Donnell went to the Super Mag Fest, a big music festival in Washington, D.C., but otherwise he hasn't been to the nation's capital that often. As for why he's a Republican, he said, "I'm a boomer and I'm a conservative." Well, he is confirmed a boomer. He says, "But I have not been a big fan of politicians." So, well, therefore, that's a good sign. "So I have a hard time even saying that I'm a Republican, but I don't really like what the Democrat representative have been doing here, and that's why I'm running against them." As for issues like video game violence, O'Donnell believes that the government was pretty clueless in going after the game industry for causing people to be violent. They just made fools of themselves, he says. That there is a lot of talk about AI coming into these industries. I feel like there are many people in politics who have no clue what AI is, he said. It would be nice to have at least one person in there who has a clue. So he claims to know what it is. A music composer? I wouldn't put them at the top of my list for someone I would suspect has sensible opinions on AI, but perhaps. It's certainly possible. Perhaps you wouldn't put a political pundit that high up either. Well, either way. O'Donnell believes he'll have an advantage in parts because he is well known in games and he has the power of what he calls the Marty Army, which consists of thousands of fans on Discord. His music is very good. I would consider myself a fan of his music. At least the Halo stuff. Yeah, Wes says he will give them benefit of the doubt. Yeah, I mean, he couldn't be worse than the Democrat. Let's put it that way. We watch your career with great interest. There you go. As the prequels weren't all bad, they have a few good quotes, a few good memes. Kieran says, I can't find the post, but there's screenshots his Discord where he said, paraphrasing, quote, "Israel is the only democracy in the Middle East and our ally." He says, "I don't know what gender identity movements are, and I want to continue our border security as much as I love this Halo." His Halo work, he's a known grifter, says Kieran. The stuff that you listed there about his political beliefs, that sounds like he's not clued in on some things and has the basic bitch Republican position on Israel, which we have all discussed that we aren't big fans of. But that doesn't sound too bad. Now, you're saying he's a known grifter. There's something else to that. Is there something that he's done aside from that you think is a problem? No, literally what he's saying there is fine, but to mention that as a big deal is disappointing. If he did. Part of a broader meltdown of the Trump verdict. I did see some tweet from Olbermann being very upset. You've got to give the Israel thing to a lot of boomers. They are probably never going to change on that, yeah. But that is something that can change later. It doesn't have to change now. And it probably will as well. That'll probably change with generations. Yeah, exactly, Wes. I'm with you on that. It's not just liking Israel, it's liking it too much. It's treating it as, like, the idea that it's America's greatest ally, it should not be the case. America's greatest ally in the Middle East, sure, but there's questions there as well, because Mossad does operate around the world. So, yeah. And perhaps I'm slightly biased in this, because I think the mutual greatest ally of the US and the UK are each other, and that there's many good reasons that's the case. But still, yeah, it's not just that, of course. Millet is also an Israel shill, and yeah, exactly. So Millet is also got the same problem. But everything else he's doing is good. Same thing with Trump. He also plans to push the announcement on Twitter and YouTube and start a channel dubbed Marty for Congress. During the pandemic, O'Donnell had great success in his first post on TikTok, where he launched a piano performance where his old dog, Baxter, howled in the background. Sadly, Baxter passed away a year ago. That video got more than 2 million views. As for Halo, the original Halo soundtrack above has more than 47 million views on YouTube. In video games, O'Donnell had some legal clashes with former employers. He left Bungie in 2014. At Bungie, he got into a dispute with management about stock options he was owed, which the company attempted to cancel. In 2015, he won a lawsuit against them and got his options back. Sounds like he might have been in the right there. Don't know for sure. That mattered because Bungie eventually sold itself to Sony for $3.6 billion. O'Donnell said he has resolved disputes with the companies involved. Interesting. Well, hopefully he got what he was owed. Okay. Through his daughter's charity, okay, now I'm suspicious, Foster Kinship, O'Donnell has witnessed how the government manages foster children. It helps navigate the system for children who have lost parents and need help. O'Donnell said he wants government to stand up for families better. He's also upset that real wages for the middle class have been squeezed, while the wealth gap has widened. So talking about the wealth gap is sort of a leftist way of wording it. He's not wrong, but that's not the way you don't need to see it worded on the right. Honestly, am I wrong? He just seems like the same kind of centrist that a lot of us were like 10 years ago, like a 90s centrist, which today counts as a Republican. If that's what he is, that's okay. That's fine by me. He's talking about border security. He's talking about the important stuff. He's not that clued in, seemingly, on culture war issues, but everything else he seems to be okay on. So it's probably fine. Definitely better than the Democrat. I would venture. Two different claims, Ghost. Two different claims. I know the 90s were now 24 years ago. What I said is the kind of centrist that a lot of us were 10 years ago, or the kind of centrist that you had in the 90s, which is not that different, to be honest. Politics didn't change a whole lot between those two dates. Where's the old fit? Yes, the 90s ended 24 years ago. Travel in any direction at any speed that isn't aimed at destroying my country as fast as possible is a good start in my view. Yeah, I'd agree with that. This is his Twitter. He has, for some reason, like a mullet. And then this is the actual campaign advert chat that he's done. Now, I wish he had the rights to use his original music, but he used something somewhat similar, not as good, but similar. Let's watch his campaign ad. Really laboring these two words. This is real. He says, our country is going in the wrong direction. Toxic divisions are tearing our families and our society apart. Really weird spacing here. Did he make this personally himself? This is really, really weird. He says, I want to help bring sanity and civility. Okay, it sounds like Kirk is reading it to the public discussion. The spoken word songs that Shatner did. And so today I'm announcing my candidacy as a Republican to represent the 3rd Congressional District in the state of Nevada. It's like, is he himself, the composer of the original Halo music, using a royalty-free ripoff of his own music? That's what it sounds like. Oh dear. Less lawyers, more composers. Actually, I'm sort of indifferent upon those two being in positions of power. Maybe composers because they have less, I don't know, investment in the system, or less, like, integration in the more corrupt areas of the system. Sure, but that's a weird line here. Chat, what I'm reading from this guy so far, from this campaign advert, and from some of the things he said, is that he's not really based or cringe, or he's not really anything that you can define clearly. He's just an autist who doesn't like some things he's seen and wants to become a politician to fix it. And if that's the case, okay, fine by me. You could do a hell of a lot worse. Boomer makes a Boomer ad and use it 11. Maybe it's just that. Autist for Congress, says Ghost. Yeah, you could do a lot worse. Kieran says he tried to release his Destiny score despite Bungie and Activision then owners saying he didn't have permission. Was fired in a bullshit fashion where they tried to steal his shares in retribution, but ultimately he kicked the hornet's nest and tried playing innocent about it all. Interesting, okay. Interesting. So maybe he just genuinely didn't have permission at the time. He's relying on the general hatred of lawyers, that's true. Don't forget Uzalu. He's much worse than cringe. He's a musician. I didn't know there was such hatred for musicians, but now it's a topic of interest. What the fuck? That is a shoe-on head outro from 2016, and it's in a Republican Boomers advert. This is just one of the by the way, in case you didn't know, this is one of the default transitions in the Apple built-in Movie Maker. So we now know which software he used, even which operating system he used to make this. And what the hell does "be nice to the goose" mean? What the hell does that mean? Early YouTube. Why did you make it yourself? Why didn't you hire your grandson could probably have made a better one than this. Come on, dude. Shoestring budget. Shoe-on headstring budget, more like. Incredibly talented guy, but very untrustworthy, says Kieran. Okay, interesting. It is Boomer's first video editor. It literally is. I think the word people use for this is kino. I think it used to be aesthetic. This is highly aesthetic. Hey, Marty, I hear that you have this saying, "be nice to the goose," and I told him it's important to be nice to the goose because the goose is where the golden egg comes from. And he goes, yeah, I like that story, golden eggs, the goose, you know that sometimes there's nothing like good old foie gras. Interesting. Charming in its boomerang. It's sort of hard. It's like, and they're like cringe and charming scale, where like they meet in the middle. With a tiny sliver in between that's neither. This is directly in that sliver, like oscillating rapidly between the two. It's really kind of both. Dude, ever heard of Fiverr? Yeah, you could just pay someone to make it. Or like hire someone professional. Like, I don't know how much money this composer has, but if he had shares in a company that was sold for 3.6 billion, he probably had some money. Well, I don't know how many shares he had. Wait, paid for by Martin Filco? This was a Fiverr ad! You're not supposed to literally spend $5 on it though, mate. You can get one that costs more than $5. I don't think he made this. I think he actually paid for this. Maybe he did though, I don't know. Maybe he asked them, like, put some Halo-like music in there, which is why they didn't use his music. He didn't compose music for this. They just searched, like, Halo-like royalty-free. Chat. Press 1 if we should go on a quest to find this music and see how long it takes us to find it. He should get his money back, all $5 of... It sounds like the most densely integrated corporate empty suits attempt to mimic the Halo soundtrack. And this is by the guy who wrote the Halo soundtrack.